Alright, what's up everybody? It's Reclaimer and welcome back to another Halo 5 video. So, as you guys can tell, this is going to be the first video of, and I'm not really sure what I'm going to call this, but my sort of, it's not like reviews, but it's like sort of talk about stuff that I'm interested in, that I want to have sort of discussions about, if that makes sense. I don't really know, but we're going to be playing the weapon tuning test playlist today, which is the new playlist they added yesterday. Which tunes the BR and like slows the fire rate and the range and stuff, and it's the BR Gunfighter Start BR Gunfighter Magnum Start Team Arena playlist. That's a new map. So it said starting dedicated server, but I've been sitting here for like 60 seconds at this point, so I'm pretty sure that I'm not gonna get put in the game, and I'm gonna have to restart the search. But today, as you guys can tell, and I talked about this in, was it my Zero to Hero video the other day? It was one of the last videos I put up where I said basically that I wanted to talk about Stephen King's It, because it's something that I've been really interested in for the past year and a half or so. And for those of you that do not know, and I don't know how you wouldn't know because it's been insanely popular, the new adaptation of the book in movie form, we're not going to talk about that voice crack, came out last Friday. So I went and saw it at midnight on opening day with a few friends, and absolutely loved it. But we're gonna get into that. But I want to basically just address this, and Halo 5, man. But yeah, real quick before we start this, I want to say that I didn't know even what it was until probably a year and a half, maybe 2 years ago. I of course had seen all the Pennywise memes and gifs and stuff that are all over the internet. You know, Beep Beep Richie and all those other things that you'll find in GIF forms. They're all over Twitter and stuff. But yeah, that's the most that I had seen, and I just knew that there was a movie and a book about it, and I just knew it was Stephen King. So I knew what it was because obviously it was insanely popular, but didn't know what it was, had never seen it, you know, whatever. And I watched this documentary called, I can't remember what it was called. It was like oh man, but it was about like pop culture legends, or not pop culture legends. It was about like popular horror legends, right? So it basically talked about the like the Hook Killer and the Candyman and the whole clown phenomenon with like people dressing up as clowns and John Wayne Gacy. And one of the things they mentioned was Pennywise. So I know that and for those of you, if anybody, why is there a beam right now? What? Alright, well, I just got Halo 5'd super hard. That might have been the most absurd Hydra kill I've ever seen. But yeah. One of the things that I mentioned, and if you guys, like I said, if one of you can tell me what that documentary was, because I cannot for the life of me remember the name of it. But yeah, basically, one of the things I mentioned was Pennywise. And so from there, I kind of looked it up and was really curious about what it was, because I sort of became, what connection is this, man? Look, man, I'm already getting distracted. But yeah, I was really curious to see what it was, and so I looked it up and did some research, found out that it was a Stephen King book. It was super popular. It was semi-widely considered to be Stephen King's best work. And there was a movie adaptation of it. And at this point, it was, you know, like I said, it was a year and a half, 2 years ago. This was after Cary Fukunaga was announced to be redoing it, or doing a new incarnation. I just shot him 3 times and beat him down. Whatever, dude. Anyway, this was after Cary Fukunaga was announced as the director for the new adaptation of Stephen King's It, which I was not aware of at the time. So I did my research or whatever, and ended up watching the miniseries. You know, didn't really like it all that much, but that's because obviously it was from 1990. It was a 2-part TV movie that did not age well for those of you that have seen it. Obviously, you know that the really the only good thing to come out of that miniseries was Tim Curry's performance, and that's not to just like shit all over it. It was like, it was a TV movie, so it was about what you'd expect from a TV movie. It was super toned down from what the book was to be appropriate for TV. And you know, it was absurdly long. I mean, it was 2 parts, but put together it was 3 hours, which is how a lot of people actually watched it, surprisingly. And yeah, the stuff with the kids, the Losers Club was pretty good, and the second half with the adult versions of the Losers Club was pretty terrible. And I'm sure you all know this, but I just want to sort of recap and sort of mention my history with it. But yeah, I became sort of interested in it, and I just, after I watched it, I just, like, I knew of it, and that was about it. But I had to do summer reading for my English class in between my sophomore and my junior year, and I decided that I was going to read it, and obviously I knew how long it was, but I had heard that the miniseries was nowhere close to what the novel was, and how incredible the novel was, and how it was great. It was super long, but it was great, and, you know, all these other things. So I decided I was going to read it, and I ended up getting about 50-60% of the way through it, and to this day I've never actually finished the novel, so that's sort of what I'm getting into. But yeah, I got through about 60% of it, and then they announced that the movie was going to come out a few months after this. I ended up not doing that as my English project, by the way. I ended up doing a book that I had already read because I ran out of time, because I was lazy, procrastinator, or whatever. But I still to this day have not finished the book, which is definitely something that I need to do, especially considering that the movie has been out. And yeah, they announced like early this year that the movie was getting another adaptation. This was after Andy Muschietti, I think is how you say his name, was announced as the new director, and Cary Fukunaga departed the project. Or it was already announced, but this is when the trailer came out. So this thing is so hard. How is that a perfect? That was not a perfect kill. This game sucks. Yeah, whatever. So yeah. Basically, super excited, and I ended up going to see it. So that was basically a really long-winded way of saying that I went to see the movie, and I'm actually shitting, dude. I'm 17 too. Whatever. But yeah. And just for the record, this is all unscripted. I just have some points that I want to cover, so it's going to be really long-winded, and it's probably going to be a more long-winded video, but I want this to be very discussion-oriented, I guess. So I really want to encourage you guys to leave comments and sort of chime in. I really love to talk to you guys, and yeah. So with all that out of the way, I saw the movie last Friday, or this is probably it was less than a week ago. This video should go live on Tuesday, so I saw it Friday when it came out. I saw it at midnight. With a few friends. We went, and I was super excited because I heard that Andy Muschietti and Cary Fukunaga before him, and that the script that was adapted from the 2014 and 2015 drafts of Cary Fukunaga, and I can't remember the other guy's name, their scripts was going to be much darker in tone. It was going to focus more on the scary clown aspect of Pennywise, and be a much more darker movie in tone, which is something that I can appreciate. I've never been super interested in horror films, but it's become something that I've been interested in the past couple years or so. And it's not even just that. It's I'm currently taking a forensics class at school, and I enjoy learning about serial killers and just things that are out of the ordinary, basically. So I don't enjoy your typical horror movies like Halloween and Nightmare on Elm Street and Chucky movies. Like, that's not really my thing. Or even, like, I haven't seen any of the Annabelle movies yet, or you know, Paranormal Activity. Basically, I'm not a fan of really any kind of horror, and I just literally shit all over this, kids. I'm not really a fan of any kind of horror, but I was really intrigued by this whole idea of Pennywise, because Pennywise in the novel is not a clown, which is how he's portrayed in the two, or well, how he's portrayed to somebody who hasn't done background research on it, is portrayed as just a clown, right? A clown that is interested in killing kids and feasting on their fears or whatever. But its true origin is that it comes from this alternate dimension known as the Deadlights, and it takes many forms, and it's immortal and has been around since before the existence of our universe and all this other stuff. So there's this real fantasy aspect to the novel that that sort of intrigued me about this character, and so I was really interested in it to see how they would do it for the movie, because obviously it's a little bit difficult if you try to advertise, especially because at the time with all the trailers that were coming out, they were really pushing this whole horror movie idea pretty hard, and so I really didn't think that they were going to go into too much, if anything, of the the whole fantasy cosmic being background that Pennywise has, and for the most part they didn't. And so yeah, but just I guess sort of just to state this up front, I really liked the movie. I absolutely loved it. Like, we left the theater at probably 12:30 a.m. or whatever, or probably, I don't know. It was, but I'm saying it was late that night, and we ended up going to Waffle House, me and my friends, and just sat there and talked about it because we all absolutely loved it. And I've seen a lot of hate. That movie's gotten a little bit of backlash, right, for certain things. But all of my complaints, and there aren't many of them, I can almost sort of solve myself, and I don't really know. Fucking grenade launcher, whatever. But yeah, I only had a couple of minor complaints. For the most part, I absolutely love the movie. And like I said, this is coming from somebody who has read a decent portion of the book. I have not read all of it, so I'm not going to sit here and pretend. I obviously know all about the plot. I've watched a ton of videos on it. And I know, so see, even though I haven't finished the entire book, I know how it goes, right? Because I was too impatient to read the 1,100-page monstrosity that the novel is. But, yeah, so just take my word for what it is. Obviously, I've seen the miniseries. I've read most of the book, and that's the basis for all my knowledge. And I've watched a ton of YouTube videos on it, and I definitely plan on revisiting the novel, and I'm probably gonna end up reading it all over again because it's been so long since that guy charged that for so long. Oh my god. But yeah, so yeah, take my opinion for what it is. I don't consider to be an expert. Like I said, there are several things that I might butcher or miss, or that I am unaware of. Because I haven't read the novel, I'm pretty sure that's not going to be the case, but like I said, don't get super offended if I say one thing and that's actually, like, not true or whatever. So yeah, that's getting that out of the way, because I know people can be super, especially with this, people have been super passionate about Stephen King's writings, and this one in particular, because it's considered to be one of, if not his best. Okay, like, what is this thing good for? Like, I just literally landed it right beneath his feet and only got him, like, weak. I'm not, whatever. So, saw the movie, absolutely loved it. I thought it was great. I thought it was a good interpretation of the character. I really enjoyed Bill Skarsgård's portrayal. I thought it was very interesting, very creepy, and different. He stayed true to the character, I thought, without while still, you know, bringing his own spin to it, right? It was very different from what Tim Curry gave, and obviously Tim Curry's performance in the original miniseries was beloved, and that's all pretty much anybody talked about. And there was a lot of controversy when Bill Skarsgård got cast, because Relative Unknown I think he's had minor roles in TV shows and movies, and I haven't done extensive research on this, so don't get on to me for that either. But basically, Relative Unknown, not a big star, and people were, you know, there was a whole not my Pennywise thing. I don't know. People were really passionate about it, which, don't get me wrong, I feel like I sounded like I was a little annoyed when I said that, but it's really cool, right? I never have a problem with anything like that, because it's really cool that people are that inspired and that passionate about just a piece of literature, right? I don't know. I enjoy it. So, regardless, Bill Skarsgård was cast, and I really enjoyed what he did with the character. The kids, and I know a lot of people are saying this, but the kids literally made that movie. The child actors that they picked, that was probably the one thing that I was really worried about going into it, was the child actors, and not only the child actors and their performances, but how they were going to sort of nerf the story almost, because they had child actors, because there might have been some things they didn't want the child actors saying, or certain disturbing scenes that they participated in. Obviously, Stephen King writing is going to be graphic and have some disturbing, scenes and themes and stuff in it. So, and that's just the way it goes. So I really didn't know, because they cast a whole group of 12-year-old, 13-year-old, 14-year-old kids, and so that was probably my biggest worry going into it. But the movie, in the very first scene, spoiler warning by the way, like big spoiler warning, I'm totally about to ruin the movie. They start the movie off and set the tone perfectly. So I was really curious to see the initial scene with Georgie, which is that iconic scene where Pennywise pops up out of the drain, the sewer drain, and talks to Georgie after Georgie loses his paper boat that Bill made for him. And immediately, Bill Skarsgård's performance in that scene was so good, and he just he really showed off his talent and everything that he brought to the role in that first scene. And we'll get to the big part of it, but he was very the whole point of Pennywise being the clown is that he can appear endearing and lure kids in with with something that they'd be comfortable talking to or want to talk to, right? Something that they'd be comfortable with, right? And so, later. And so he really played that well. He wasn't just this super creepy horror movie clown. He was nice to Georgie and had his boat and made him laugh and was making jokes with him, and it was really cool. And there was one scene where he sort of slipped and fell back into the sort of hungry animal dead clown type thing, and it was really that one moment in that scene was just so perfect, where they're laughing, and they kept the detail from the book where Pennywise's eyes changed from blue to yellow. And so he was talking to Georgie and making him laugh, and his eyes were, dude, what? They made the railgun charge. What is this, bro? This has to be part of the weapon tuning. I'm going crazy. Okay, yeah, no, that's insane. But yeah, it was, I don't know, it was so well done. And there was a scene where he sort of slips back into that, and his eyes turn yellow, and he's drooling all over himself, and it was super creepy. And Georgie kind of tells that, or can tell that there's something up, and so starts to leave, and then Pennywise ends up reverting back to the happy clown. And then the big part of that scene, the way that they set the tone, was that the old lady came out, and this is basically how it went in the book, to my recollection, was that the old lady from the house came out, and Georgie, when reaching for the boat, has his arm grabbed by Pennywise, and Pennywise proceeds to bite off his arm, completely tear it off, and Georgie, with blood all over him, missing an arm, desperately tries to crawl away, while Pennywise then proceeds to drag him in, and this lady sees the whole thing. So, and they kept all of that. It was super dark, super scary. It threw me and my friends off completely. Obviously, I had read that scene before and seen it before, and I knew what had happened, but that still sort of got everybody in the theater, because obviously George is a 6-year-old kid, and it was brutal to watch, and everything in this movie was just brutal. And I know I'm being super long-winded with this, but I really want to sort of talk about it, and this is unscripted, like I said, and I'm just sort of laying my thoughts out there. But yeah, and immediately it was just much darker, and that really set the tone for the whole movie. And then it immediately cut to from that, it jumped 6 months into the future, from fall of '88 to summer of '89, when all the Losers Club were getting out of school, and immediately showed us through a few really good scenes, basically everybody, who they were and their status, and did a really effective job of introducing the characters. Another thing about this movie that I've been really I've never been sort of into movies or dissecting them until very recently, and I've been watching a lot of video essays and sort of studying the different arts of filmmaking, because it's something that I've become really interested in. And so I went into this movie telling myself that not only did I want to enjoy it, but I really wanted to analyze this as a movie, because it's something that I haven't obviously been interested in, like I said, until very recently. And so it was very competently made. It was really well. It was really great. The lighting, the cinematography, everything was just really, really well done. And in the first like 5 minutes, we got to see some chemistry with the original 4 members of the Losers Club, Bill, Richie, Eddie, and Stan, and had some really good. Another thing is that this movie was just filled with profanity and dick jokes and mom jokes and like all this stuff. Is like they really talked how kids talk to each other. They absolutely nailed that. They I've seen some, or not behind the scenes things, but I've seen some like interviews and stuff with cast members that said they really just like let the kids do their thing, and their chemistry was perfect. Like they talked to each other exactly how kids would talk to each other, which is something that was really cool. That I didn't. Okay, well, sword got nerfed, but yeah, it was super well done. And from there, we got introduced to Beverly, who's getting harassed in the bathroom like by a bunch of girls who were like calling her a slut and bullying her, and they dumped I don't know if it was toilet water or something out of the trash can. I don't know what it was, but they like dumped something over the top of the stall where she was hiding. And then we were introduced to Ben, who was getting bullied by the Bowers gang, which the Bowers gang, like, they were like terrifying in this movie. Henry Bowers in specific. They didn't really go into the whole Patrick Hockstetter story, which is understandable why, because if you've read the book, you know why that whole story in Patrick Hockstetter's arc is really disturbing. But they really Henry Bowers was absolutely brutal and super scary in this movie, and so they were bullying Ben, and then we got I think Mike's introduction was that he was delivering meat to was it a grocery store? I can't remember, but yeah, just really effective character introductions that showed all of their status, obviously being losers, and really was effective in introducing them and letting us know where they stood as people and their status, and just really well acted all around. And it was, I can't stress enough how well acted this movie was. It was just is really great. They picked absolutely the perfect cast for this movie, and yeah, I don't know. It's just it was fantastic, and the actors that played Richie and Eddie specifically, obviously Finn Wolfhard of Stranger Things, was fantastic, and Jack, I can't remember, Jack Dylan Grazer, is that his name? Is that his full name, or is I don't know. I'm fairly certain that that's his name, but those two in particular stood out to me as really good. And the others, I mean, they were all good, but those two in particular stood out to me as giving really great performances that were really true to the characters. And I literally could not kill that kid fighting him for the longest time. Oh, you suck. But yeah, it was from there it went into, and I don't want to sit here and give a synopsis of the movie, but one thing that I did want to touch on was the initial Pennywise scares, because that's obviously a very important part of the story, not only in the story but in this incarnation specifically. And so we start off. I think Ben was the first one. It was either Ben or Mike. Mike sees Pennywise in the form of like the black spot fire, which his parents were also changed around to die. Not in the black spot fire, but in their. It might have been at the black spot, or no, it wasn't the black spot, but it was I think it was in their home, and Mike was trapped in the room over and couldn't get to them, and so that was his fear. But then also Ben was changed around to the one who was going to be doing like the research and stuff in this movie. Before that was sort of what Mike did. I don't even know how that happened. But yeah, Ben was like in the library doing research on the history of Derry, and came across the ironworks explosion, which killed 108 people, 88 of which were kids, and came across a picture of a headless kid, and then was chased around by the headless corpse of a child in the basement of the library while Pennywise was there. Obviously, Georgie saw, Bill saw Georgie in the basement scene, which was also really well done. Bev had I believe Bev had the bathroom scene. I believe that was her first encounter. And then Eddie had the leper in front of the Nebolt house. But basically, I don't want to, like I said, I don't want to sit here and give a rundown of the whole thing, but it was really well done. And it was really scary. I was really like I said, I'm not super into horror movies, so I might not be the best person to talk to about this, but I was like thoroughly scared in these sequences, and it didn't rely too heavy on jump scares, which was great. And then it was just all around super well done. Had me pulled in the whole time. I don't know. It's just I can't stress enough how much I just loved the way that this movie was done. Just everything from the atmosphere to the look of it, and just it was great. And the scenes that stood out to me in particular were the Nebolt house. The first encounter in the Nebolt house was really well done. Super well acted by Eddie in particular. And the sewers scene was really good. And then a big complaint from a lot of people has been the first sewer scene at the end of it, the first encounter in the Nebolt house, which was sort of almost set up like the conclusion to the movie, and I can sort of agree with that, because after the first encounter in the Nebolt house, the kids are sort of traumatized. Like, they were able to get away, but they're sort of traumatized after what's happened with Pennywise, and Eddie broke his arm, and everything that happened, and they go their separate ways, and it really feels like the end of the movie, but then we go into the third act, and a lot of people say that the third act is really slow and sort of dragged on, but I didn't feel that at all. People were wondering why Pennywise didn't just kill Beverly, because Beverly got abducted in the end, or towards the end, and that was what pulled all of the losers back together, was Beverly's abduction. But Beverly had an encounter with her father, which was her biggest fear, with her father's sort of nods. It was sort of nods at like sexual abuse, and they get into a fight or whatever and have an encounter, and then Beverly sort of conquers that. She stands up to her dad and ends up like knocking him out with this. I don't know what it was, but it was like a vase or something like that, and ends up knocking him out. And so she overcomes her fear, and so Pennywise takes her down into the sewers, and because he can't scare her, because she's already conquered her worst fear, decides to leave her there floating. Which, by the way, the floating thing in this movie, it actually brought a meaning to "You'll Float Too," which Pennywise in the sewers in his lair had a giant tower of garbage and belongings of all of his victims, and had all of the bodies of his victims floating above it. And I thought that was a cool touch. You know, that it wasn't my favorite. You know, I think it's scarier that he would just kill them and that they would like vanish and be gone. But I think they went for it. They really gave that meaning, right? Because in the first in the miniseries, obviously, "You'll Float Too" is a reference to the balloons or whatever, but in this, it actually had a meaning. So I didn't mind it, but then also the deadlights were used. Pennywise, in order to put Beverly in her sort of comatose state or whatever, opened his mouth really wide, and in the back of his throat, there were like 1,000 teeth in his mouth, and in the back of his throat were these 3 little lights, sort of like which were the deadlights. And I really like how they threw that in there, and they didn't explain it. They didn't try to go for the super cosmic explanation, right? They just threw it in there. And for those of you or for the like those of us who had read the book, we obviously knew what it was. We knew that that was the Deadlights. But for people that had not read the book or didn't know what it was, it wasn't like it didn't throw people off or what the whatever. Yeah, it didn't distract, right? It was just this creepy thing that this creepy character was doing, which I thought was really well done. I was really concerned with how they were going to get around that. And my initial thought was that they just weren't going to include it, but they did. They found a way to put it in there, and it was effective. And, you know, obviously fans of the book knew what it was, and people who hadn't seen it didn't know what it was, but it was disguised in a way that was effective. And I just had the laggiest death of all time. But so that happened, and then there was this sort of stereotypical kiss scene that gets hated on, where Beverly's like comatose from what Pennywise has done to her, from showing her the Deadlights, and then Ben, who is part of this love triangle that was established between Beverly, Ben, and Bill, tries really hard to wake her up because obviously he cares the most about her, and can't wake her up, and then ends up kissing her, and that wakes her up. So a lot of people hate on that scene, but I actually really liked it because it was sort of like it was sort of comedic relief in that moment, which I thought it was well done. It was I feel like if they had just ran with it and made it super serious, it would have been kind of weird, but it was sort of done like I thought it was lagging. It was sort of done like he kissed her as like a last-ditch effort, and all the other kids were like, ew, dude, what the fuck? And you know, she didn't wake up at first, and all the kids were like kind of weirded out and like, well, what the fuck was that? And then she woke up, and all of a sudden, and they were like, oh my god, it worked. And so it was like, I don't know, I thought it was a cool scene and a cool way to do that. But yeah, I mean that gets a lot of hate, and obviously it's you know, whatever. If that's what you think, then that's cool, because you know, people interpret that different ways, but as in my opinion, I like that scene. But then after that, they have the final showdown with with Pennywise in the sewers. They all get separated, actually, which is really cool. There was this really good scene with Stan where Pennywise sort of manipulates Stan into being separated from the rest of the losers. And I just got shot by my teammate 3 times. Sort of like separates him and shows him his worst fear, which is this creepy lady from a painting in his dad's office, who is like the Jewish rabbi. And basically she attacks him and starts like not eating him, but okay, that nay literally got them that cap. I totally would have blamed that kid, but whatever. Yeah, and then there's this really great scene where Stan like freaks out because he thinks they left him, and it was, I don't know, that was super well done, because I wasn't really sure about the actor that played Stan up until that point, which, by the way, the actor that played Stan was the actor that played young Star-Lord in Guardians of the Galaxy 1, if you didn't know that. I actually didn't know that until I IMDb'd it. But yeah, that was really well done. And then the final encounter in the sewers came down to them basically, it was like been described as like the Boggart battle from Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, which was pretty accurate. It basically, Pennywise, who was frenzied at that point, was changing into everybody's worst fear to try to scare them and throw them off and stuff. And nice grenade. Oh, great. And so it came down to, they all conquered their fears, and they sort of beat the clown to death. He took Bill hostage at the end, and was like, basically told the other kids, was like, you guys can all leave now, and I'll only keep Bill, or you guys can stay, and I'll kill you all. And there was this really the most kick-ass part of the whole movie, in my opinion, because Richie is my favorite character, especially in this movie. Probably not overall, but in this movie in particular, Richie was absolutely my favorite character. He basically says, Bill, you got us into this, it's your fault, you punched me in the face, because there was like an altercation with them when they first broke up after the first encounter in the Neibolt house. And then he goes, like, you punched me in the face, and you got us all into this, and now I'm gonna have to kill this fucking clown. And that was the most like badass possible line that he could have possibly delivered. And Finn Wolfhard's delivery, and just Finn Wolfhard's acting in general in this movie was incredible. And just the way that, and obviously I'm a fan of him because I've since watched Stranger Things and absolutely loved that. And I don't know, he absolutely killed it. And that line in particular stood out to me as being particularly badass. And it ended up that they sort of beat the shit out of Pennywise, and then he retreats and jumps down a well and is not dead, right? He's sort of like disappearing. He's doing like the thing that Voldemort did in the last Harry Potter movie whenever he died, and he was sort of like splitting into little pieces or whatever. But then, I mean, obviously Pennywise isn't dead, because at the end of the movie it flashed up, you know, It Chapter 1, and then at the end of the credits you can hear Pennywise laughing, which implies that he's not dead. And of course he's not dead because they've already confirmed a sequel. But yeah, just like overall, I know it's super long-winded and I didn't really touch every single point, but overall, if I had to recap, is I absolutely loved this movie. The acting by all the kids in the Losers Club, Holy Whirlwind, and the, I don't know, Bill Skarsgård's interpretation of Pennywise I thought was really good. Overall, I give this movie like a 9 out of 10 because I absolutely loved it. I'm a really big fan of this sort of story, and I know that was super long-winded, like I said, and I didn't hit all the points, but I would seriously recommend going to see it. Because I absolutely loved it, and I'm really interested to see what you guys have to think about it. I know people are very, very opinionated about this subject in particular, and I've already actually gotten some comments and some tweets about it. So definitely let me know what you thought of it. Obviously, like I said, this was all coming from somebody who's read a large portion of the book and somebody who's seen the miniseries and now the movie. So, like I said, take my opinion for what it is. But I absolutely loved it. I would really encourage you guys to go see it. I know this is a really long video, but I really love sort of doing this sort of laid-back discussion type video. Let me know if you would prefer this to be maybe more condensed, or, you know, have like actual points to go off of, because I basically just turned OBS on and started recording and talking, and so I really like when I can do stuff like this where I can just sort of sit here and talk to you guys. Yeah, I'm sure, like, because we're going on 37 minutes at this point, I'm sure not all of you are gonna watch this entire video. But yeah, that's pretty much gonna do it for me today. Like I said, please leave comments and let me know what you thought about it, and yeah, so I love you guys. Thank you so much for watching. Always appreciate it. Subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you guys later.